A viewer wrote in saying he pointed his gun at someone at the gas station and then called 911, wants to know if he's going to lose his gun. This is going to be a can of worms. Before we get into that, we have a super secret giveaway going on right now, but it ends really soon. If you want to enter for your chance to win this long distance hole puncher absolutely free, click the link in the description down below. I'm here again with Tom Grieve, noted criminal defense attorney. Tom, this is going to be a great one, okay? The viewer says, I pointed my gun at a person at the gas station who was asking for money, and then I called 911, and I'm wondering if my gun's going to be taken away as evidence. And this, I don't have a lot more information about this, but holy cow, this just opens up the can of worms of why are you pointing your gun?
Right.
And will you be arrested for brandishing? I know there's very few states that actually have a word that says brandishing, but why are you pointing your gun at this person?
I think the state of the internet likes to use that word quite a bit. I mean, look, I think that's a bit of an overreaction. If your son or daughter asked you for some snack money,
right?
So this is the classic reason as to why lawyers always say it depends.
It depends.
Because we tweak a few facts from teenage, son, daughter asking for snack money to panhandler suddenly pulled a knife on me, and we go from big problem to okay.
Yeah, and everywhere in between, the spectrum of what person could be asking money for. Some, maybe it's a guy who needs bus fare. Maybe it could be anything.
Right.
I want to reinforce to people, the reason you pull your gun is that you believe you're in imminent fear of death or great bodily harm.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So keep in mind, so there may not be an exact brandishing law in many states, but many states will have it intentionally pointing a firearm at another person being a crime. So you can generally only be privileged to do so if you can articulate why you were facing that danger. Okay. Now let's be clear. Pulling out a firearm, pointing at another person, most prosecutors will hopefully not construe that as a use of deadly force. Okay, trust me, I can imagine some prosecutors, I'm picturing their faces right now, who would consider that or try to argue that a use of deadly force. Okay, but by and large, there's obviously a world of difference between pulling out your firearm and pointing it at someone versus actually pulling the trigger. That's a big step.
Yes.
Right, that's a big step. So the fact pattern here is going to change a lot because if we cannot show why that person was a major threat to you, okay, then you pulling out the firearm and pointing at them is probably not something you will have been privileged to do. So another thing we've got to keep in mind is what's going to be the status of the evidence here. So the nice thing about gas stations is they tend to have lots of cameras at them to catch drive-offs and all that kind of stuff, right? So hopefully there's going to be some camera angles, or likely multiple camera angles, that will show the whole thing. And the reason why I say that is because most people who have not been through the justice system, in my experience, can take for granted that, well, everybody's going to tell the same story about what happened and the truth will come out in the wash and I'll be exonerated. And it's like, no. Without cameras, what's going to happen is you're going to have 4 or 5 witnesses who aren't going to know anything that happened other than, suddenly this guy's pointing this gun at him. And, the guy who approached you for cash is going to say, he pulled a gun on me, so I pulled a knife out in self-defense. That's why I had a knife out. And suddenly, we've got problems.
Yeah, and anyone who's ever taken witness statements understands exactly what you're talking about, is that you come away with sheets of paper with vastly different stories. So to kind of recap, you cannot pull a firearm out unless and point it at someone unless you can clearly show why that person's a reasonable threat against you. And I realize I'm leaving that very vague, and that's because there's so much room for interpretation in state law as to where that line might be. Does it have to be an imminent deadly threat against you? Does it have to just be a non-deadly threat against you? There's so much room for interpretation on that. You really have to check your local listings to figure out the precise answer to that question. Keep in mind, there is a middle ground situation which wasn't part of this question, where you pull out your firearm but you do not point it at them, which will hopefully get you around a lot of those intentionally pointed firearm laws and all that kind of stuff. But
I just want to throw that out there for the viewers, however, understanding that that was not part of this particular question that we're facing. So I think in a nutshell, you have to be able to articulate before you pull out a firearm and point it at someone why that person's a threat against you. And ideally some sort of deadly threat or something like that. And keep in mind when we talk about tactical situations at gas stations, if you have your head on a swivel, you've got a trip line there, right? Yeah. So there's some things you can try to use to maneuver and try to put some objects between you and the attacker. But a savvy bad guy will also be able to maneuver and use that against you. That's the reason why you and I have watched, I don't know how many gas station gone wrong videos in the past. And the ones that go the worst are the people who they're pumping gas, they're watching that little TV thing, or they're just watching the numbers go depressingly higher and higher. And they have no, they're getting surrounded, there's somebody coming from behind and all that kind of stuff. And the people who do well are the ones who see it coming and position themselves to anticipate what might come next.
And this is going to be totally unfair, but that's what I do to you. So knowing that these are billable hours, we didn't answer the question, is this person going to lose their gun to evidence? I'm going to say yes.
Yes. Very good chance that that's going to be yes. I feel the 0.2 now that we're clicking into. But yes, it's going to be loss of evidence if the police show up. The only thing that everybody's going to be able to agree on is the fact that you pointed a gun at someone else. Now, look, are there going to be situations where the police do not take the firearm into evidence? Of course. This is not going to be 100% of the time. But is that going to be very reasonable and foreseeable that you're not going home with that gun? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And know right from the beginning, when the cops get there, they're going to disarm you. They're going to take that gun away from you to make sure that you don't use it while they're standing right there. So, it's very reasonable that this gun might be gone for a while.
Yes.
Thank you again very much, Tom. Really appreciate the help.
Thanks, Kevin.
You're pulled over by the police and you're carrying concealed. Do you need to do anything special in this scenario? Like tell the officer you have a gun. Click this video right next to me and I'll break down that scenario step by step on what you should do.